Hi guys, I'm Kat and welcome back to my channel. I feel like I should turn the filter off for a second. Give me a second. I wanted to make this video instead because this is something that's been kind of on my mind. I have my laptop right here. I think I'm gonna move some stuff around. Probably should have done this before I hit record, but I didn't, so that's good. Okay, today I wanted to talk about a true crime thing because this was an investigation that happened in 2009. I think I was, 14, 15 years old, and I completely forgot that this happened. So obviously, as you guys know, I'm someone that is into true crime and creepy shit and ghosts and murder investigations and cold cases and stuff like that. And I kind of wanted to do a video about it. I was kind of inspired by Bailey Sarian. I think I'm saying that right. I'm not going to do my makeup because just not that talented. So instead, I'm just going to sit down. We're going to talk about this investigation, and the investigation we're going to talk about is the mysterious disappearance and possible death of Susan Cox Powell. So if you are someone who is interested in true crime and stuff like that, continue watching. Disclaimer, if you are someone that is sensitive to domestic violence, violence towards children, swearing, or murder, please exit out of this video. Thank you. Okay, if you hear like stuff in the background, I'm also doing laundry at the same time, so try not to let that distract you from what I'm about to say. This is a very long story and a long investigation. This was an investigation that went from 2008 to 2012 and actually even until 2019. So this is a long one with a lot of bits and parts. I did get a lot of this off of the internet. I tried to paraphrase it all and tried to kind of summarize it, but it still ended up being extremely long. This is a very tragic and sad story. One that kind of sticks with you when you hear it. As I was typing this out, I started to feel really heavy because it's one of those things that did not have to happen, but it did. So to make myself feel better, I try not to burn myself, I have my chai tea candle lit. I have both of my kitties in here sitting with me. Susan Powell was born in October 16th, 1981 to her parents, Chuck and Judy Cox, and she grew up in a very LDS home. I couldn't really find very much about her, but as far as I could read, she was just a very normal woman who grew up in the LDS church with her parents they were very devout and had very strong faith. In 2000, she met Joshua Powell. So a little background on Joshua Powell because he plays a huge part in this story. Joshua Powell was born January 20th, 1976, so he was 5 years older than Susan. And he was born to Stephen and Terica Powell, and I can't say this correctly, I think it's Puyallup, Washington. And his parents had a very, well, you could say chaotic and bad relationship. It was said that his father, Stephen, would actually show his boys, Joshua, Michael, and Jonathan, he would show them pornography, and that he would never discipline his boys. He would never show them the right behaviors of things. He would never do any of those things, which caused Terica to file for divorce in 1992. In 1992, trying to find where's that. According to some evidence that was put out, I think in around 2013, could be wrong, it was said that Joshua actually killed his sister's gerbil or hamster, and that he threatened his mother with a knife on multiple occasions. So if that's not an automatic red flag, which Chuck Cox, he said that he didn't know about this at all until really, really far into the trial, and he felt like that should have been something that they should have noticed, because typically when kids are murdering animals and stuff like that, it kind of is textbook psychological or psycho tendencies, which is like something that I feel like should have stood out. Joshua became a student at the University of Washington in 1998, and this is where he met his first girlfriend named Catherine Terry Everett. And at first their relationship was like normal relationship, whatever, until they moved in with each other, which is usually when it happens. That's usually when things change. So after they moved in with each other, Josh became extremely possessive and controlling over her. She actually said that he would have restrictions and limitations on what I could and couldn't do when it came to my family. If I was going to visit them, he had to come too, and I couldn't go by myself. So he wouldn't allow her to do certain things with her family, which kind of, he came from a really disruptive family, so he became really controlling. Catherine eventually went to visit a friend of hers in Utah, and luckily and smartly decided not to go back to Seattle to Josh, and called him and broke up with him over the phone, which is probably really smart because he seemed like someone who could be potentially aggressive and abusive, and so it was probably the safest way for her to do that. In the year 2000, at a dinner party in November was when he met Susan. They had been classmates in their regional Institute of Religion class. I can't remember, but they were classmates, and I'm sure they saw each other before that, but they actually met each other at a dinner party. They ended up getting married super quick in April of 2001. He began working as a businessman and started working with a bunch of other companies and businesses. And Susan, you're being distracting. And Susan was going to cosmetology school, but she was also working at the Wells Fargo Investments after they had moved to West Valley City, Utah. After that, they had two sons, one in 2005 and one in 2007. But to give some perspective of where Josh came from, so you can kind of understand how, like, the rest of the story, and so you can understand Josh in a deeper way, so like, the darkness that's going to come soon. Before they had moved to West Valley and before they had children, Josh and Susan actually lived with Stephen, Josh's father. And according to a lot of records and some recordings, Stephen had developed an interest in Susan, if not a very strong, severe, and creepy obsession. He would follow her around with a camera without her knowing, and he would use a small mirror to watch her, especially when she went to the bathroom, and he even stole her underwear several times. Eventually, he confessed his very creepy behavior and feelings to her in 2003, and naturally she was freaked out, rejected him, and luckily Josh and her moved away from him so they could have some distance. It was said in Susan's journals that there was tension in the marriage, that there was a lot of problems between her and Josh. Some of it was because he wanted to go to church with the family, which if you're someone who comes from a religious family and like you previously went to church a lot with each other and then all of a sudden you stop, I guess that could be a red flag. I wouldn't understand that, because to me it's like if someone doesn't want to go to church, whatever. But to some people, that is a red flag. But the worst part that really got to Susan was that Josh kept in contact with his father, Stephen, despite the fact that she was super uncomfortable with it, and they had intentionally moved to West Valley out of Washington to put distance between her and his father, because his father was really creepy and way too obsessive, and he made her feel really uncomfortable. But he kept in contact with his father despite that, and that really bothered her, which is understandable, because it would bother me too if my boyfriend and a family member of his was creepy and obsessive with me and I wanted to get away from him, but then he kept like in contact with that person, it would be weird, and it would just make me feel like he didn't care. According to a lot of Susan's friends, though, Josh was not very financially responsible. He would buy a lot of extravagant things, and he was also extremely controlling over Susan. He was allowed to do things, but she wasn't, obviously. And in 2007, things started to really take a turn in 2007. Josh decided to file for bankruptcy and stated that they were $200,000 in debt. But also, in 2008 is when people started to notice a difference in Susan's behavior. And she started taking recordings of the house, and it was destroyed. Parts of it were absolutely destroyed. And she stated it was because of Josh. And she actually decided to take out a secret will because she felt like she was terrified for her life. She knew there was something wrong. She actually said in the video that, I want to document extreme turmoil in our marriage. And the scariest thing that she said to me, which is a huge red flag that for me should have really sealed the deal for Josh, was, if I die, it may not be an accident, even if it looks like one. Flash forward to 2009. 2009 is when the true darkness and tragedy began. December 6th, 2009 was when Susan Cox Powell disappeared. Her two sons actually had gone to church. Actually, I think she was declared. No, I'm wrong. My brain switched the 6 to a 9. Anyway, so her two sons had gone to church that day, and then they had gotten home. The last person to actually see her alive was a neighbor or a friend that had come by the house and then had left around 5 p.m. to go home. Now, what's really interesting is that before she was declared missing, it was actually declared that the entire family was missing on December 7th because nobody had heard from them. Terica, Josh's mom, and his sister actually went to look for them after the boys were actually said to be dropped off at daycare. They had called the police because when they had gotten to the house, they couldn't make contact with Josh or with Susan. The police became really concerned that maybe the family had been poisoned by carbon monoxide poisoning, and so they broke into the house, but they couldn't find anything in there. The only thing that they could find in there, which is extremely suspicious, was 2 box fans pointed at a wet spot on the floor, which I find very interesting. People became really concerned when Susan didn't show up to work on December 7th. And when they actually found all of her belongings, like her wallet, her keys, her ID, stuff like that in the house. And when they found her cell phone in the vehicle that Josh had been driving around. At around 5 p.m. that day, or on December 7th, Josh and the boys had actually arrived home. And of course, not too long after they got home, the police had taken them to the station for questioning. Josh said that he had left the house after midnight with the boys to go camping, and Susan was asleep when they had left, which is weird. Super, super weird. So the police decided to go, because they went camping at Simpson Springs, Utah. Yeah. So the police decided to go to Simpson Springs, Utah to visit, to investigate the area, to find proof of what he said. But at the time, they couldn't find any proof of any camping or anything incriminating or anything like that. Which, I mean, could be because, like, maybe there wasn't anything there. A lot of eyebrows were raised about this because, first of all, why are you taking your 2 young boys camping after midnight, which is weird, and 2, apparently Josh was scheduled to work not too long after midnight, and his boss didn't know that he wasn't going to come into work and that he was camping. And Josh, his excuse was, I thought it was Sunday, not Monday. December 9th was when the investigation truly kicked off and began. They searched the house and the premises to see if they could find anything incriminating, and they actually found Susan's blood on the floor, her life insurance policy that was for up to $1.5 million, and a handwritten letter that Susan had said that she had feared for her life. In 2003, a blood sample was actually found to match Susan, but then there was another one that they couldn't really identify, and the sample was said to be an unknown male contributor, which is so frustrating because, like, I don't understand how blood samples work, or if maybe over time they can get ruined. But I don't understand how it could be unknown, but I don't know. Anyway, Josh began to exhibit really suspicious and weird behavior someone wouldn't usually exhibit when, your wife is missing, the mother of your children is gone, they found blood, typically people would be like, worried. But Josh, he actually liquidated Susan's retirement accounts, and he canceled her chiropractic appointments she would go to, but he also took the boys out of daycare. Now, this is usually behavior for someone who, your spouse died or your family member died, and you're trying to deal with a lot of, their appointments and stuff that they do, their subscriptions. That's usually something you do when someone dies, but she wasn't presumed dead at this time. She was just missing. So usually people would react, not in mourning, because, she wasn't dead as far as he knew, but he was doing all these things as if, well, she's missing, whatever. The police actually ended up questioning the eldest Powell son, and he had said that they did go camping, but that Susan went with them and that she never came back with them, that she never returned, which is strange. And then several weeks later, after Susan's disappearance, the eldest son's teacher said that he had stated that his mother was dead. Now, okay, it's a little weird, right? And then the second son starts to do weird things. So the youngest son, it was said by Chuck and Judy Powell that while the youngest son was at daycare, he was drawing a picture of a van and 3 people in it. And when the caretakers asked him about this picture, he had said, and I quote, "Mommy was in the trunk." Now, these are children. These aren't kids that are maybe, if they were like 10 or 11 years old, I would think, okay, maybe they're acting out, maybe all this stuff is making them believe things. But these are children. They don't understand what's going on. If Josh did kill Susan and they saw it, they're not going to understand what's going on because they're young. They don't even understand what death is. So the fact that they said stuff like their mom was dead or mommy's in the trunk and stuff like that is really, really weird. But also, another thing that's weird is that some of Josh's coworkers said that they heard him speaking or talking about hiding a body in an abandoned mine shaft in the western Utah desert. They're being distracting again. It's weird. Every time I'm not making a video, they're fine. Turn on the camera, they're it's time to act out and be crazy. But anyway, he said he had hidden a body in an abandoned mine shaft in the western Utah desert. Now, to me, if my wife is missing and I'm a person of interest, or potentially person of interest, or not even yet, I wouldn't be saying shit like I hid a body in the western Utah desert in an abandoned mine shaft. That's not shit that you want to say. You don't want to say shit like that because people are going to get worried and confused. They're going to think that you murdered your wife. People already think that you did, and then you're going to say shit like that. That's going to make people believe it anymore. You're just beginning to dig yourself a hole that eventually you're not going to get out. On the 14th of December, Josh decided to get an attorney. He attorneyed up, and police said he had become increasingly unhelpful and uncooperative. He became really nervous and really paranoid, and he just stopped being helpful, which I don't understand how helpful he was before. A few days later, he actually took his boys to Washington to stay with his father for the holidays, which is a lot of red flags. So the website susanpowell.org was actually launched and described as a website that was meant for just Susan Powell. So some of the posts were about, finding her, but most of them were actually posts about defending Josh, basically saying that the Cox family, Susan's family, and the LDS Church were trying to create this smear campaign of trying to make him look guilty, pinning something on him that wasn't about him. While other posts, sorry, I'm not laughing, this isn't funny, but it's just ridiculous. Other posts were saying that maybe her disappearance was connected to the disappearance of a reporter named Stephen, I'm not going to say this right, Coacher, that maybe she had ran off with him to Brazil. But to make this even stupider, and to make matters worse, Stephen, Josh's father, and Josh were not only claimed to have made those posts, but they said that Susan had abandoned their family because of mental illness and had ran off with another man. The reason this is ridiculous, well, one of them, because there's so many, is that typically when someone is upset about losing someone, the mother of your children is gone. Your wife, the person you supposedly loved, is gone. She could be dead. You don't know. But instead of being heartbroken and putting out posters and trying to do news things and trying to find her, you're saying that she abandoned your family because she was crazy and with another man. Typically, to me, if you're trying to act like it's not your fault, you would do all the things that I previously said and not all the things that you're doing, because it's just making people believe that you killed her more and more. You are digging yourself a hole that you're not going to get back out of, at all. Which I think I just said, but I'm saying it again. So finally, because of this, investigators started to look into Stephen Powell, which I'm so happy about, because he had this gross obsession with Susan and they knew about it. And clearly he was a very unstable person. So to me, it wouldn't surprise me if he was part of this mystery, because he was creepy and she rejected him, which probably stung a lot and hurt his ego. But in 2010, the investigators and police actually seized his computer and found over 4,500 images of Susan in his computer. Pictures that she didn't know about, and pictures that were close and personal of body parts and places on her body that she didn't know about, which is just a whole lot of ick. But police also decided, you know what, we're going to look into another Powell. We're going to look into Michael. Because Michael decided, not too long after she had disappeared, he decided to get rid of his Ford Taurus, his car. The reason this looks suspicious is because all of a sudden this person disappears and then you decide, oh, I need to get rid of my car. It's like, if you know your family is being investigated or someone in your family is being investigated, you probably shouldn't do stupid shit. Or just don't kill people. There's that. That's probably the best advice. Anyway, police actually got sniffer dogs, which I think that's a cute name, to actually look into the car, and they had indicated a decomposing body in the trunk, but the DNA didn't prove that it was Susan. Which to me, it's like, if they indicated a corpse in their car, why wasn't Michael arrested? Unless they were like, well, maybe after it was at the junkyard, someone else put a body in it. But to me, it's like, what the fuck? Why wasn't he arrested or investigated deeper after the dogs indicated a decomposing body? That doesn't make sense to me. A lot of this investigation makes no sense to me. There are things that should have been done or questioned that nobody questioned or nobody cared about, which is ridiculous. Now, of course, between both families, the Cox family and the Powell family, things became really, 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 really hostile. In the news, Josh and Stephen had actually claimed So this is more behavior that is just causing the hole to get deeper. Josh and Stephen had claimed to find journals written by Susan actually talking about the relationship between her and Stephen. And Stephen had claimed that they were falling in love with each other prior to her disappearance. Now, as a female person, or someone who presents as female, as a vagina owner, as it were, no. Just no. Why would she love that person after he clearly disrespected her? It was so creepy. He has 4,500 pictures of her that she didn't know about. Like, what kind of ridiculous bullshit is that? Because not only is Josh digging this hole, now Stephen is digging a hole and putting him in it. It's just like, it doesn't make sense. But luckily, this didn't obviously pan out well. They tried to present journals of Susan that had been written while she was a teenager as evidence that she wasn't stable, which again, she was a teenager, of course she wasn't. But the judge, thankfully, told both men to never present them as evidence again and that they need to return the journals or burn them, which is good because a journal is where you write your instabilities, especially when you're a goddamn teenager. Of course you're not stable. Hormones and shit, like, what teenager is a stable, well-rounded human being? I would like to know. Now, within all this chaos, finally we get a reward. The lights have shone down from the sky. We've all gotten 1,000 golden stars because in September of that same year, Stephen was arrested and taken to prison for voyeurism and child pornography. So luckily, he was off the streets. Thank God, karma's a bitch, right? So, like any sane person, like any well-rounded, responsible grandparent would, Chuck Cox, Susan's father, decided to file for custody for both of her sons the day that Stephen was arrested. Because these kids were in the house of a pedophile and a creepy motherfucker, a dude who possibly killed his wife, and another guy who was potentially his accomplice. So, clearly, that was the best thing to do. And the court had awarded temporary custody over the boys and stated that Josh would have to move out of Stephen's home before he was granted complete custody. Now, Josh had rented a home in South Hill, Washington, but it was said that he never actually lived there or stayed there. He just made it appear that they did so he could have his kids back, but he actually stayed in Stephen's house. So obviously, full custody was granted to his grandparents and taken away from Josh, which, you know, that's good for the most part at this moment in life, right? Luckily, not everyone in the Powell family was crazy and completely fucked up. So Jennifer Powell, one of Josh's sisters, actually had stated that she believed that Josh was responsible for Susan's disappearance and possible death. Alina actually agreed, his other sister actually agreed with that, but eventually retracted, saying that Josh was harassed or pushed by investigators and that she didn't believe that he was responsible for anything. I bet they all feel so stupid, right? Meanwhile, just for a side note, because I found this part interesting, was that most court cases aren't cheap. They are not cheap at all. The city usually has to put forth a lot. And this was no exception because this court case costed the city $500,000. That's a lot of money. And the mayor, he stated that the costs for the case were actually worth it. He said, and I quote, "We feel that we are getting to the tipping point where we have more hot evidence than we had in the past 2 years." And he believed that the case was moving forward. Flash forward to now in 2020, when it's been 11 years and people still don't know what exactly happened to Susan Powell, and she's still missing, potentially dead, and it's a cold case. So he probably feels really stupid if he's still alive. In 2011, 2 years later, this is still going on. The court orders Josh to be mentally evaluated, and the guy that evaluated him, the results came out that he was an adequate parent, that he had steady employment history, and no criminal record or history of domestic violence. Now, here's the problem that I have with this. And this is a problem that I have when people are like, well, he doesn't have any, records of domestic violence. Well, that doesn't mean anything, does it? Does it? Because, okay, what if this person has a lot of power and just says, oh, well, I haven't done that? Because that's happened. But there are a lot of domestic violence cases, or IPV cases, which is intimate partner violence, that people don't report. They don't report them, either because they don't realize it's domestic violence or IPV, or out of fear of their partner or fear for their partner. The fear of their partner is that if their partner finds out that they reported them to the police, it could get worse, potentially deadly. Or fear for their partner because you love them, you have this connection, it's comfortable, and you know the repercussions of if they get caught, and you don't want that to happen, especially if you have children with them. So my problem with this is he clearly was unstable. He clearly had abusive tendencies. It was recorded in her videos. His previous girlfriend, Catherine, obviously showed that. I mean, even if he was just a little controlling and possessive, typically things go from that kind of, controlling, possessive thing, from verbal to mental to eventually physical, and become really, deadly. And so when someone gets evaluated like this, it's like, well, all because he doesn't have those things doesn't mean that he's not. It doesn't mean it wasn't happening. It doesn't mean he wasn't hitting her. It doesn't. And that's still something that should be thought about, because this person clearly has something going on with them. So you can't just be like, oh, well, he doesn't have this on record, so clearly it's not happening. It's stupid. But there were other things that the evaluation person did notice that were kind of concern. The evaluations also developed that there were some worries, some concerns, some things that were freaking him out. That were going on during the ongoing investigation. For example, Josh had trouble admitting his shortcomings, or the fact that, there were things that were wrong going on with him. He was extremely overbearing to his sons. So overbearing, almost not like how a normal parent is, but overbearing. And that he was extremely defensive when it came to people asking him questions, and he had really severe paranoia. And the evaluator person said that he had traits of narcissism, which, doesn't shock me. It was advised that he would be granted visitation with his boys several times a week with the supervision of a social worker because, as I said, he had custody taken away from him. And 2012 was... 2012 is when is probably the darkest part of the story, which a lot of people are going to say, how is this the darkest part of the story? He possibly killed his wife. Stephen, his father, was a pedophile. Clearly a lot of people were unstable, but if you listen further, you'll start to understand. Police had seized Joshua's computer as well. And they had found images of child pornography, but also bestiality and incest. But these images weren't necessarily illegal because they were drawings and cartoonish, and they were drawings of cartoons in 3D. So it wasn't anything like actual children or anything like that. The thing is that despite that, it still causes a concern, because even though they weren't of real children or anything real, it still shows... Sorry, I ran out of memory, but even though those pictures were of drawings of cartoons in 3D, it still is just a matter of time before it rears its ugly head and actually starts to be real children and real things. because people are messed up and will do really shitty, awful, fucked up things that I will never understand. Josh actually denied having those things on his computer, which doesn't make sense. And the court immediately said that he needed to have another evaluation for another psychosexual evaluation and a polygraph test. Now, while all this is going on, Michael, Josh's brother, is making a bunch of Google sites. He's posting a lot of bullshit, basically saying that Chuck and Judy Cox were abusing and neglecting the boys, that they were causing harm to the boys, and that the police in West Valley City were harassing Josh, putting guilt on him, and mishandling the investigation of Susan's disappearance. Chuck and Judy Cox got a lawyer, and luckily Google took down the sites because they violated a lot of things. Now, I'm going to preface this right now. The end of this story is not a happy one. I really want to say that it is a happy one, that they figured out what happened to Susan, that everybody got sent to jail. But honestly, that's not what happens. And I just want to let you know that to prepare you for the end of this story. So, on February 5th, 2012, Elizabeth Griffin Hall, a social worker, called 911. She brought the boys to supervised visit to Josh. And it was reported that when she brought the boys to the door, Josh had reached out, grabbed the boys really quickly, and slammed the door in her face, not allowing her to go in. Not too long after that happened, the house exploded, with Josh and both of the boys inside. And a lot of investigators believed that it was a double murder-suicide. When Josh's father, Stephen, was informed about this tragedy, he didn't seem surprised nor upset. He was more mad at or rude to the police officers that told him about it than anything else. And after a very long investigation into the explosion, it was evident that it was deliberate, that Josh had planned the death of himself and the boys. The boys had died of carbon monoxide poisoning, and that they had little chop marks on their arms and on their heads. A hatchet was found by Josh, and the police said that it was believed that Josh had attacked his children before they were overwhelmed by the poisoning. Fire investigators had found 2 cans of gasoline and that it was spread around the home intentionally. Relatives and friends had actually received goodbye messages before it happened, and that some had actually gotten instructions on how to find money and shutting off Josh's utilities of the home. Josh had withdrawn $7,000, and actually before the incident, he had donated the boys' toys and books to a local charity. And he had named his brother Michael as his life insurance benefactor. This is, to me, this is the heaviest part of this story. Because both of the boys were born in 2005 and 2007. So that would make one of them 7 and one of them 5. I have a few theories with this, but I'm going to wait until I reach the end of the story before I tell you the theories. So we're really close to the end, and then you'll understand, and then you'll hear the rest of my thoughts. Scroll down. On February 11th, 2013, a year and 6 days after Josh had murdered his children, his brother Michael actually took his own life. In 2015, Terica and Alina Powell, his mom and sister, had sought to declare Susan dead so that they could collect her life collect her life insurance. But Chuck Cox went to court and won that battle and gained full control over Susan's estate. Chuck and Judy Cox actually sued Washington DSHS, or the Department of Social and Health Services, because they were more worried about Josh as a parent than they were the safety of the children, which I agree with. They cared more about the sanctity of him being a father than the fact that this person was clearly unstable and possibly a murderer, rather than the safety of the boys. And I honestly believe that if they would have cared about that more, if they would have actually thought about the safety of the boys more than trying to prove he was a good father, I think that the boys would be alive right now. I think they should have taken them out of that home. I think they should have separated him from his father. The boys should have been separated from their father until he was proven not guilty, because I feel like since they still allowed visitation, I think that was really damaging, not just because he ended up murdering his own children, but because I can only imagine the psychological turmoil it's taking and the trauma that was happening in these kids. They were only 7 and 5 years old, but even then, like, the trauma of, your mom's gone, you probably saw her get murdered, your father's the murderer, your grandfather is a pedophile, one of your uncles is also a terrible person. It had to be really hard, and I feel like it would have been better to pull those kids out of that situation, and they didn't do that. They also, Susan's family also filed for lawmakers to, both in Washington and Utah, to make a bill that restricted or blocked visitation from parents that are being investigated for murder, which I also agree with that. If this person is being investigated for murder or is obviously a person of interest, clearly you feel they're not safe enough to be around, that you feel like this person murdered someone. So I feel like if children are involved, they should not be around that person, because you don't know if something like this is going to happen, and clearly it did. If they would have blocked him from visitation, if they would have made it so he couldn't see his kids, I think they would be alive. It's been 11 years. It's 2020 now. It eventually will be 12 years. December 6th will be 12 years. And Susan Cox Powell is still considered a missing person and presumably dead. A lot of people have called out to Chuck Cox to declare her dead, but he refuses to do that until she is found, until her body is found. Now, unfortunately, that's probably never going to happen, and I really hope it does, or if they find something of her, but with how long it's been, I don't know how much they could find. I really hope that there is some sort of peace within the family right now. I don't think there will ever be peace completely, but I do hope that some have found some peace in it. There has been a lot of good that has come out of it. Chuck Cox has done a lot of things with charities and stuff to try to make some positive out of it, because he knows that Susan would want that. And it's put a lot of limelight on a lot of really awful things. The fact that the kids died is so tragic and unfortunate, because they didn't have to. They were innocent parties in all of this, and my theories are a couple of things. One, I think that the kids probably knew more than they realized, because they were children, they didn't understand. I do think that Josh and Michael and possibly Stephen did murder Susan Powell, which is quite the claim, but I believe that they did. The reason for that is because every behavior and every sort of evidence towards them points that direction. Now, of course, innocent till proven guilty, but I think that they've been proven guilty enough. I think that Josh may have killed her potentially out of rage or anger. He could have possibly killed her because he found her journals or knew that she created a will. She could have told someone about his abusive tendencies. Or maybe it was an accident. I do think that Michael helped him get rid of the body. I don't think Michael killed her, but I do think he helped him get rid of the body. I do think it's potential that maybe Stephen killed her, that she rejected him, it caused her rage and he killed her, and then Josh and Michael helped him get rid of the body because, you know, family, I guess. I don't think it was some stranger that broke into the house and killed her. If potentially, like, it's so strange that he killed himself and both the kids, because it just kind of proves more of the fact that you killed her. If you're someone who can try to hack up your children with a hatchet and then murder them, then there's no reason why you couldn't murder your wife. I think Michael may have taken his own life because either, you know, the loss of his brother was too great, or he felt guilt. And I forgot to mention that Stephen did get out of prison, but not too long after he got out of prison, he died of natural causes. So even though I would never wish death upon anyone, at least we don't have to walk the same earth or breathe the same air as these three awful humans. I do feel for the families that have been left behind, and I hope that they find some peace from it. And I really hope that maybe one day they can figure out what happened, or maybe if there is someone that knows more, they could come forward. But it's kind of hard to tell because it's been 11 years, almost 12. So, yeah. But that is the mysterious disappearance of death, if not death, of Susan Powell. So I know that this story is very heavy. It's a heavy one, but it's still very fascinating. I think it points out a lot of things that people need to be aware of. One is protect your children, because you don't know who they're around. You don't know what people are capable of. Because these kids were around two pedophiles and a potential accomplice to murder. Our children are the most important people in our world, and it is our job as adults to protect them and to make sure they're safe. Another thing to pay attention to is domestic violence. One thing that's always bothered me is when you're a friend of someone or a family member and you know they're in a relationship that is potentially dangerous or toxic, and you let them do it without saying anything, at least to them, because you don't want to hurt their feelings or because it's not their business. But the thing is, you could save their life, because they might not know they're in a world of domestic violence or IPV. They might not know it, and you might be able to point it out and save them. But also, if you're in a relationship like this, it's good to know the signs, because sometimes people don't know they are. Sometimes people don't know, especially if you're in a young relationship. So it's good to know the signs. It's good to be super educated whether you're in a relationship with domestic violence or you're not, because that way you know the signs. There are some resources out that I'm going to post. I'm going to put resources to domestic violence and what you can do to save yourself from that or save someone. I'm going to put resources to how to protect your children from potential predators. And I will even though the people that committed suicide were awful human beings, I will still put a resource for suicide prevention for anyone who might be feeling that way. But it's good to know and pay attention, and the more you know, the safer you are. It's good to stay safe. It's good to be safe, because there's a lot of terrible things happening in the world, but there's also a lot of really good things, a lot of things that can come out of tragedy, and there's a lot of really good things. And I promise that I'll try to do a video that's a little more positive next week, because this one is pretty intense, pretty heavy, and I promise I'll try to do something more, I don't know, like less dark. It might still be like maybe an urban legends or I don't know, something else, but it's not going to be as heavy as this. But this is just something that is really interesting to me, and it happened in West Valley, Utah. I've been there, and there are other things that have happened in Utah, like Ted Bundy or Elizabeth Smart. You don't usually think about Utah as things happening like that, like this in Utah, because, you know, you think of Utah as the Mormon state. It's the state that has the strictest rules out of all 50 states. It's the state that a lot of people don't even know it exists. But there's a lot of things that have happened in Utah that are pretty dark. Utah does have a dark history, but you don't really think about it because of those reasons. And I find it really interesting. Spooky, interesting, real fucked up. Humans can be so fucked up. And I don't understand. Like, I can be mean. I can be really mean and mouthy, but I could never kill someone or hit someone out of anger or anything like that. I will never understand that. And I will never understand people that can hurt children or hurt things that can't defend themselves. I will never understand that. And I feel lucky that I don't, because it's a good thing. But getting another flash for no memory, so I'm going to go. So thank you for joining me this video. If you liked it and would like me to make more videos like this, or like videos like this, hit that thumbs up button, hit the I keep getting cut off, but thank you for joining me in this video. If you liked it, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos like this one or other videos that I do, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell. Whenever I post, I've been trying to post every Monday. Lately, I've been lacking because things have been happening and I've been very tired, but I'm going to try to get back on top of it. And yeah, if you have anything that you'd like to hear me talk about, let me know, and I'd be more than happy to talk about it. Well, not more than happy. Depends on what it is, because there are some things that are like this that's like kind of, you know what I mean. But anyway, thank you for joining me, and I hope that you have a wonderful day and a beautiful night. Please stay safe out there. Be safe, be smart. And this is Kat, signing off.